Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Ulm, which is a 2 to 4 player board game designed by Gunter Burkhardt. This one takes around 60 minutes to play on average. Before I get into my review of Ulm, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer here in the UK, and if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. So Ulm is a Euro strategy game where you're trying to get as many victory points as you can over the 10 rounds that you play through. So the main board is going to look like this, which is divided up into 8 different segments, and you have a river running through the center of the board here, which is going to be a way you can lose or gain points at the end of the game. You've got a deck of cards here which play quite a significant part in the game. You've got the cathedral, which doesn't really do anything, it's just there for aesthetics, but it does act as a little storage point where you can put these little round counters on to show how far through the game you've progressed. And I suppose the main feature of the board is this 3x3 grid here, which is how you take and resolve your actions. You also have these guild crests, which again can come into play later, and some generic resources such as these Ulm sparrows, your coins, and a bag full of other tiles, which will come into play a bit later. So the turn structure for this game couldn't really be more simple, where all you're going to do is you're going to lean into the bag, you're going to grab one of the tokens at random, and then you're going to play it on one of these rows or columns in this 3x3 grid. Now optionally, you can choose to cash in one of these Ulm sparrows in order to take one of these tokens from the little dockyard here, just to give you that more kind of certainty about the actions you want to take. But let's just say I did choose this coin at random. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to either put it on one of these rows or columns and slide all the corresponding tokens already there to the relevant direction. So let's just say I played this coin in this direction, therefore I'd push this one up like so, and the 3 remaining tokens in the one I've just played, or in the row or column I've just played in, will be the actions that I take this turn. So in this example, I'll take 2 coins from the supply. And you'd also move your boat once. So what I'll do is I'll move my boat along the track here, which you can see is going to start kind of losing me fewer and fewer points as the game goes on, and potentially gaining me points as I cross this bridge here. I could even acquire some bonuses if I push right to the very end. So once you've played your token and resolved the actions in any order that you choose, you will voluntarily get to choose to play a card or not, provided you have one in your hand, but at this point I don't have one. Now what's important to say is that now this part of the dock is blocked. Nobody else will be able to activate a token in that column until these are cleared. Now let's talk about what some of the other actions actually do. So we've already covered the coin one, and we've covered the boat one. Now this one here, this kind of checkerboard, will allow you to take a bunch of tiles from one of the docking areas. So therefore, if I ended up taking this action, I could take that one there and put it in my personal supply, meaning that somebody else could now activate that column again. The seal action allows you to cash in 2 coins and take one of these seal actions depending on where your boat is along the river. So you can see here in the first segment, I'll be able to activate this seal or this seal action. And when you do that again, you pay your 2 coins and then take the corresponding bonus. So these do all kind of different things, such as being able to take from the kind of docking area, gaining a coin, moving your boat, drawing these shields from here, and then choosing one of them. And these will do all kind of different things, such as giving you victory points. These ones here with the very specific locations on will allow you to claim one of these spots as your own. So you find the matching symbol like so, put it on there. Now it means that anytime anybody goes there, you will gain 2 points. You'll also gain 2 points immediately. Now additionally, whenever you draw one of those seals, you will put one of your markers on the corresponding image on the grid here, like so, meaning that whenever anybody uses that row and pushes it onto the segment next to your marker, you will gain an Ulm sparrow. This seal action will unlock a permanent power for yourself, such as being able to gain 2 points whenever you align 3 of the same symbols in a column, a row, or a diagonal direction. Whenever you gain a coin, you'll get an additional coin. You can create an additional dock space whenever you take that action, or you can even move your boat faster along the river. And there are even some more of these ones you can play with, so each game is going to feel slightly different. These other ones are a bit more self-explanatory, drawing cards. This one here, again, another seal action, another guild crest action. This one here allows you to put or gain a point for each marker you've already got on the board in each quarter, and so on. So you can see you get some quite nice little bonuses. And the final action you can take is the card action itself. Now, when you do this action, you can either play another card from your hand, or you can cash in tokens that you've collected from taking the dock action here. And if you cash in two different tokens, two different types, then you'll get to draw one card from the deck here and keep it in your hand. Or if you do two of the same, you get to draw two cards and keep one of them, putting the other one on the discard pile. So let's take a look at what these cards actually do. So you've got ones like this, and I should say all these cards are broken down into two pieces of, or two choices, I suppose, one of which is going to be able to play immediately, and the other one you can store for endgame conditions. Like this city wall card here, for example, says I can use one seal action to place a seal in a city quarter of your choice, without being restricted to where your boat is. Well, this one here says at the end of the game, for each city quarter in which you have the sole majority of seals, I'll gain 2 points. So it's got a bit of a majority mechanism there. Or a lot of the cards will look like this, where provided you have a certain token in your supply, you can throw it back into the bag and get the corresponding reward. So in this example, I'd get a coin, 2 points, and I'd get to move my boat 0 to 2 spaces. And a lot of the cards will have these kind of set collection bonuses on it, like this, where it means that you can see this card has like a painting symbol. So this painting card will give me 3 points. If I have 3 of them, I'll get 15 points. If I have a painting, a barrel, and one of these cloth symbols, then I'd get 12 points. That is essentially how the game is going to play. And once those 10 rounds are over, you're going to add up all the points you've gained throughout the game. You're going to add up all the victory points you've gained from your card play, and the ones that you've got from travelling along the river, or potentially lose some if you don't make it past the bridge. And also for every remaining Ulm Sparrow you have, you're going to get an additional point. Okay, so let's share some thoughts on Ulm. And I think the best place to start is with the key mechanism, at least in my opinion, is this 3x3 grid. I think this is very clever. It works nice and smoothly. Just draw that token from the bag, take a row or column, and the 3 actions that remain in the main segment are the actions you get to take. This is like a dynamic thing. Sometimes you'll play something which will leave something on the plate for another player because, inevitably you're going to interact with each other by, again, leaving opportunities and tokens in certain places. If somebody really needs to fly along that boat track, then they can potentially line up a huge boat action and fly along that river. Yeah, very simple, but it works well, and it's something that we don't really see very often. In fact, I can barely think of any games that use this mechanism in order to resolve the actions you take. You normally see it in some kind of draft or stuff like that, but not in the actions you're taking. So it's a really nice touch there, and I'd love to see this be used in more games, to be honest. I also thought that some of the player powers were really cool. Like particularly, I think this is my favourite one because it adds a whole new dimension to this part of the game, where if you start lining up certain actions, like for example in a future turn, if I ended up taking a coin action like this and I've left these 3 here, therefore I would get an additional 2 points there. So it adds a whole new dimension to that 3x3 grid. Or even like ones getting more income, taking more more segments from the dock and stuff like that, moving your boat faster. They're all worth having, which is really nice. Now, something I will say is that sometimes, and I say sometimes, it actually happened quite often in the times I played this, you are left without many choices on this grid, just by the way that the tiles come out. Like for example, when we played this the other day, there was no money on the grid at all. There was no money left in the dockyard here, so therefore I think both of us were completely broke, and there was no way we could get any money. So therefore, it was like not only was the money actions out of the picture, we also couldn't take a steal action because we had no money to do it in the first place. So it does feel like sometimes you are wasting your whole turn because you can't really pull anything off, and because you don't have the resources to back the action up. I did enjoy the way the seal action works with the boat action, because you have that very limited time window in which you can take that specific boat out, that specific seal action, because as soon as you've gone past here, then you can kiss goodbye to this action. So those two things are, they do conflict with each other. You want to stay and take the actions you exactly want, but time is ticking and you want to be moving your boat along as quickly as possible, because that is a lot of points you're bleeding if you don't make it past this bridge here. So yeah, I thought that those two things worked really well to each other, and nice conflicting mechanism there. I also thought it was pretty cool that you can use the cards in two different ways, whether to get that quick grab now and bank those points early and secure them, or take that risk and build towards endgame set collection. So that, in theory, I think is a really good touch. In practice, it didn't quite work the way I would have liked, because what I thought was that most of the time, in fact all the time, we ended up taking the instant action because there were very easy ways to get points. Like, for example, this steeple card, you only need to throw in one of these seal tokens or one of these card tokens into the bag, and you get 6 points instantly, which felt like that's quite a healthy amount of points for very little work. Whereas you could, maybe get 3 different cards at the end of the game just to get 18 points. So it was like, yeah, it didn't quite work, and it felt quite an unsatisfying way to gain points. And it's like, a lot of the time you felt like you didn't earn your points, at least in my opinion. I also thought the use of these shields was okay, because you do get to draw 2 of them and keep 1 of them. Much like the cards, I usually found like you would always just take the quick grab rather than taking the smaller amount of points, but potentially getting points if anybody else goes to that region. Because normally, especially later in the game, some of these shields you'll draw, you'll put on the board here, but everybody's already gone past that point anyway, so they're not going to go back and you're not going to get any more points from it, which usually meant you just take the the silver shield and get the points that way instead. Additionally, if they know that the building belongs to somebody else, they're probably not going to go there because they don't want to give you any points. So a good idea. We've seen a lot of worker placement games and things use this ownership of buildings where the owner gets a benefit if somebody else goes there. In this one, it didn't quite work. And that kind of ties in to the ownership of these different buildings here as well. When you put your token on there, you're just going to passively start gathering these alm sparrows, which is really useful. They're really good to have. But I don't think it's really going to affect or impact on the decision space when it comes to the other players. Just because you've got a seal there, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to take that action anymore. It's not going to make me think twice. And it was just like a passive benefit to the owner, which again, just didn't feel that crunchy or didn't add that much more weight to the key decision. I think the round structure for this game is really good. Just draw that tile, slide 1 along and take those 3 actions, potentially play a card if you want to. Nice and smooth, it works nice and cleanly, and it means that no matter what player count you're playing with, the game does move along at a pretty good speed. Interaction is mainly passive through the use of the 3x3 grid, the opportunities you're leaving to other players. The boats do interact with each other in quite an interesting way, where you don't actually share spaces with other people. So for example, if these 2 spots were filled with boats and then this player wanted to move, they'd actually skip over all 3 onto the next spot. So you could use that to your benefit. And of course, you've got the other stuff as well, such as using buildings that other people have claimed. But I've already talked about that not being such a big part and doesn't play a huge factor in the overall experience. I think the production for this game is of a very high standard. The components themselves are good quality, and particularly the tiles that you play with, they're nice chunky pieces, going to hold up well. You've got your other traditional Euro bits, such as your wooden pieces. The way the board and the game looks, I think it's looks great. This is exactly my taste when it comes to how board games, how I like my board games to look. Very atmospheric. Love the way it looks. Just feels like a cool traditional Euro. And nothing overdone. Cards are well written, no issues at all with the production. I suppose the cathedral is a little bit superfluous, but it adds a little bit of table presence to the game. Okay, so let's share some final thoughts on Ulm. So there are quite a few positives and quite a few negatives I have to say about this game. So positives. Mechanically, this part here, the 3x3 grid, I think is great. Love this, would love to see this be used again and again. It's a great system, intuitive, it's fun, it's interactive and dynamic, so that's really cool. I also like that the game scales well. It's nice and quick. It only takes around an hour to play, and those 10 rounds do fly by pretty quickly. And it's generally well put together. I also like the pressure of, the river system. You want to move along as quick as you can, but you don't want to leave some of these opportunities behind. So you might want to sit there for a while, but as you're doing that, time is ticking. And every time you're not moving along the river means you're potentially giving up the additional victory points. That's a really cool touch. Now, as I said, I do have some negatives to say, and that is mainly due to the card play. It feels like the kind of the crux of the game, or the way you're going to get all your points, is through the use of these cards. And a lot of it is going to come down to the luck of the draw. If you keep on drawing your cards that play part of your set here, then you're probably going to do well. And because you don't get much mitigation to to filter through the deck, that's either going to work for you or it's going to work against you. Additionally, as I mentioned during the main bulk of the review, when you get these cards here where you can just chuck a tile into the bag and get a whopping 6 points, it feels very unsatisfying and it doesn't feel like you earn those points. So that for me just left me feeling a little bit empty and just like, yeah, not very satisfied. And not feel like doesn't make me feel like I played well. So it kind of feels like all the stuff is loosely tied and a bit kind of pointless when ultimately it's all going to come down to which cards you play and which cards you draw. So yeah, sadly that's kind of my sticking point with this game. A lot of potential here. Would love to see it kind of revamped into a version 2 or something, because there is some real cool redeemable features here, but ultimately it's not going to stand up to the great Euros despite looking awesome. The board looks fantastic. Yeah, the gameplay is just a little bit short of the mark, and I'd probably rate it somewhere around a 6 out of 10. So certainly not a negative review, not a bad game at all, but considering the amount of Euros I have in my collection, this one would no way hit the table anymore. So that is Ulm.